Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't touch me, you're annoying. That's what my wife, Jessica, said one Tuesday night as I reached for her hand. Her tone wasn't sharp or angry. It was worse. It was casual, like brushing lint off her shirt, like I was nothing more than background noise. I stood there, frozen in the kitchen with the fridge humming behind me. I expected myself to argue, to ask her why, to beg for some explanation. But none of that came. Instead, I just looked at her, nodded once, and turned away. My silence was louder than any fight we could have had. That moment didn't feel like rejection. It felt like clarity. I realized I had been clinging to a version of her that didn't exist anymore. The woman who used to laugh at my jokes, who'd grab my arm in the middle of the grocery store just because she felt like it, was gone. All that was left was someone scrolling her phone, rolling her eyes, and treating my touch like an inconvenience. I didn't yell. I didn't slam doors. I didn't chase her for answers. Instead, I started pulling back. Quietly. Strategically. The kind of withdrawal she wouldn't notice at first. No more coffee waiting for her in the morning. No more, "How was your day?" when she came home. No more lingering in the living room, trying to share space when she clearly wanted none of it. At first, she didn't react. Maybe she thought she'd finally trained me into silence. Maybe she thought this was what control looked like, me orbiting around her while she decided when, or if, I mattered. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't orbiting anymore. I was drifting. I started waking up earlier than her, hitting the gym before sunrise, not because I wanted to look different for her, but because I needed to feel alive again. The weight on the bar didn't lie to me, didn't flinch when I showed up. And after weeks of being invisible in my own house, the first nods from strangers at the gym felt like oxygen. It wasn't long before people outside noticed the change. My coworkers started asking if I'd been training for something. Waitresses smiled a little longer when they set down my coffee. A woman at the gym offered me her machine with a smile that lingered too long to be casual. And every time it happened, I felt the shift. I wasn't invisible. Not anymore. Back home, Jessica started picking up on it too. She didn't say anything at first, but I caught the way her eyes followed me when I changed my shirt after the gym. The way her voice got sharper when she asked why I was coming home later than usual. The irony was sharp enough to taste. The same woman who told me not to touch her was suddenly uneasy when other women started noticing me. That's when I knew the silence was working. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was building something she couldn't control, something she didn't see coming. And it was only the beginning. I knew the exact moment Jessica started to feel it. It wasn't a blow-up or some dramatic confrontation. It was subtle, the kind of shift you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. She came into the kitchen one evening, leaning against the counter, arms folded, watching me as I rinsed out a glass. Her eyes weren't cold anymore. They were searching. She asked if I was working late because of a new project. I answered with a calm, "Just busy." That was it. No explanation, no opening for her to pry. I walked past her, leaving her standing there with a question she didn't know how to finish. The next day, I came home later than usual. My shirt was still damp from the gym, my bag slung over my shoulder. She had set the dining table for two, candles lit, pasta steaming in bowls. It was the kind of thing she hadn't done in months, maybe longer. She looked up, smiled like it was nothing. But I saw the effort behind it, the nerves. She asked if I wanted to sit down and eat with her. I nodded, sat across from her, and ate in silence. I thanked her for dinner, but nothing more. I didn't compliment the food. I didn't ask how her day was. I didn't give her the reaction she was fishing for. That silence hit her harder than any argument could. She fidgeted with her fork, searching for something to say. At one point, she reached across the table, her fingers brushing against mine. I didn't flinch, but I also didn't respond. I simply pulled my hand back to my lap, like I hadn't even noticed. She froze for a second, then looked away, her smile cracking before she forced it back into place. Over the next few days, her attempts grew more obvious. Lipstick before I got home. A robe she hadn't worn in years. Her voice suddenly soft when she asked how my day went. And when those gestures didn't work, the question started. Why was I coming home late? Who was I talking to on my phone? Why was I suddenly so quiet? I answered each one with the same steady calm. Just busy. Nobody. All good. I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't accusing her. I wasn't begging for affection or chasing after scraps of attention. I was giving her nothing but absence, and the silence was louder than anything I'd ever said to her before. That's when I saw it, the first crack in her armor. She wasn't annoyed with me anymore. She was uneasy, because the man she told not to touch her was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. And I wasn't planning on slowing down. It started small. A look that lingered too long at the coffee shop when the barista handed me my order. A nod from a woman at the gym after I finished a set. Tiny signals, almost forgettable, but not to Jessica. One Saturday afternoon, we stopped by the grocery store together. Something we hadn't done in months. I loaded the cart while she scrolled through her phone. At checkout, the cashier, a younger woman with bright eyes, smiled at me, her gaze holding just a second longer than polite. I smiled back without thinking. Nothing more, nothing less. But Jessica noticed. I saw her shift uncomfortably, her posture stiffening as she shoved the bags into the cart. She didn't say a word until we got home. Then she muttered under her breath that the cashier had been a little too friendly. I didn't respond. I just carried the bags into the kitchen, set them down, and moved on. But inside, I felt it, the balance tipping further. The same woman who once brushed me off with, "Don't touch me, you're annoying," was suddenly alert to every glance other women gave me. Her control was slipping, and she could feel it. That week, I came home from the gym later than usual. Jessica was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She asked why I was spending so much time there, who I was talking to, what I was doing. I told her calmly that I was just working on myself. She didn't believe me. I could see the doubt flicker in her eyes, the way she scanned my clothes, searching for clues that weren't there. She wanted to catch me in something, to reassert control, but there was nothing to catch. Because I wasn't cheating. I wasn't chasing anyone. I was just done chasing her. That silence terrified her more than anything else. I watched her switch strategies, testing me in subtle ways. She started wearing perfume again, cooking dinners she hadn't made in years, even laughing louder when she was on the phone with friends, laughter that was designed for my ears. But I didn't react. I sat there, detached, polite, almost indifferent. The turning point came one evening when I returned home with a new shirt I'd bought after work. Nothing flashy, just fitted well. Jessica's eyes locked on me the second I walked in. She asked where I had gotten it, why I needed new clothes, who I was trying to impress. I shrugged and said I was just updating my wardrobe. That answer landed harder than I expected. For the first time in years, she didn't look smug. She looked nervous. Because deep down, she understood the truth. The man she dismissed so easily was becoming visible again, not to her, but to everyone else. And there was nothing she could do to reverse it. And I wasn't done yet. The shift wasn't just emotional anymore. It was practical. For years, I had been the one holding our life together, paying the bills, managing the accounts, keeping everything running so smoothly that Jessica never had to think about it. She loved to talk about her independence, but in reality, she depended on me for more than she ever admitted. That was about to change. The first step was quiet. I rerouted part of my paycheck into a private account. Nothing dramatic, nothing she'd notice right away. I canceled a couple of subscriptions she liked, but never paid for. Streaming services. A beauty box she bragged about on Instagram. When she went to log in that weekend, and the screen showed account inactive, she shouted from the living room that something was wrong. I stayed in the kitchen, sipping coffee, and said nothing. She waited for me to fix it. I didn't. That silence rattled her. She came storming in, holding up her phone, asking why the account wasn't working. I shrugged, told her it must have expired, and went back to my coffee. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. The man who used to drop everything to solve her problems was suddenly unmoved, detached. That shook her more than any argument could. The following week, I stopped automatically filling her gas tank on weekends. She found out the hard way when her car stalled on the way to meet a friend. She called me, her voice sharp, asking why I hadn't noticed. I told her calmly that she was capable of handling it herself. She hung up without another word, but when she walked through the door later that evening, the silence between us was heavier than ever. The cracks deepened at dinner one night. She glanced at the credit card bill and saw a few charges missing, things I had stopped covering. She looked at me across the table, her eyes narrowing, and asked if I had canceled something. I didn't even pause my fork halfway to my mouth. I told her I was making adjustments. That was all. Her face hardened, but there was a flicker of panic too. For the first time, She realized I wasn't just pulling away emotionally. I was dismantling the world she thought was untouchable. Piece by piece, I was erasing my role as her safety net. And she hated it. That night, I caught her pacing the bedroom while she thought I was asleep. She was scrolling through her phone, whispering to herself, trying to make sense of the changes. But she couldn't, because I wasn't explaining them. I wasn't warning her. I wasn't fighting. I was just leaving, quietly, steadily, and in ways she couldn't stop. And this was only the beginning of what she would lose. Jessica's unease shifted into something sharper. She wasn't just unsettled anymore. She was trying to claw her way back into control. It started with small interrogations. She asked why I was going to the gym so often, why I suddenly cared about clothes, who I was texting when my phone buzzed. I gave her the same calm answers every time. Short, steady, without emotion. Just busy. Nobody. All good. The more she pushed, the colder my silence felt. One evening, I came home later than usual, my shirt still damp from the gym. She was waiting by the door, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. She asked where I'd been, who I was with, why I hadn't answered her texts. I told her calmly that I'd been working out and didn't feel the need to report my every move. Her jaw tightened. She didn't like that answer, but there was nothing she could do with it. I walked past her, showered, and sat down to read. The silence that followed was deafening. The next day, she changed her approach. She tried to play affectionate, as if nothing had happened. She brushed against me in the kitchen, lingered at the table while I was eating, even laughed louder when she was on the phone with her friends, making sure I could hear. But the harder she tried, the less I gave back. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't angry. I was just absent. That absence began to eat at her. I noticed her glancing at my phone whenever I set it down. Once, I came back from the bathroom and found her quickly locking the screen, pretending she hadn't been scrolling through my messages. She didn't find anything, of course. But the paranoia was hers now, not mine. She was living in the uncertainty I had carried for years, wondering what I was doing, who I was thinking about, and why she was no longer at the center of my life. Her frustration boiled over one Friday night. She suggested we go out to dinner, somewhere nice, just the two of us. She was dressed up, her makeup flawless, her smile rehearsed. I looked at her for a moment, then told her I wasn't in the mood. I went upstairs and left her standing there with her clutch in her hand, her plan crumbling before it even began. For the first time in years, I saw a real panic in her eyes. Not because she thought I was angry, but because she realized I wasn't invested enough to be angry anymore. That's when it hit her. The man she once dismissed as annoying wasn't waiting for her touch anymore. He was already gone, and she was the only one left reaching across the distance. And the colder I became, the more desperate she would get. Her desperation finally broke through the surface one night. I had just come back from the gym, grabbed a shower, and sat down in the living room with a book. Jessica walked in, pacing like a storm in heels. She asked why I was always late, why I never told her where I was going, why I was acting like a stranger in my own house. Her voice rose with each question, her tone sharp, demanding. But I didn't answer. I turned a page and kept reading. That silence cut deeper than anything I could have said. She shouted again, asking if I was seeing someone else, if there was another woman. Her words echoed off the walls, filling the room with accusation. I stayed still, my eyes on the page, calm, unshaken. She hated it. She wanted a reaction, anger, denial, anything. But I gave her nothing. Finally, she stepped closer, blocking the light from my book. Her eyes burned with frustration as she asked what was happening to us, why I didn't fight for her anymore. I looked up once, met her gaze, and then looked back down. That single glance was enough. She froze, realizing that the fight wasn't between us anymore. It was inside her. She stormed out of the room, slamming the bedroom door hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. I stayed seated, listening to the silence that followed. No apologies, no explanations. Just stillness. And for the first time, the silence belonged to me, not her. The days after that were a study in contradiction. Jessica tried to act normal around friends, putting on her usual smile, posting photos online as if everything was perfect. But at home, the cracks showed. She lingered around me more, watching for signs, asking questions with her eyes she was too proud to say out loud. When I left early in the morning, she peeked through the blinds to see where I was going. When my phone buzzed, she tensed. pretending not to care while her body betrayed her. One evening, I came home to find dinner on the table, candles lit, wine poured. She was dressed like it was our anniversary, makeup perfect, hair styled. She smiled and said she thought we should have a nice night together. I sat down, ate quietly, thanked her, and stood up when I was finished. No compliments, no softening, no return to who I once was. She sat there frozen, her smile fading as she realized she couldn't pull me back with old tricks. That night, she cried quietly in the bedroom, thinking I was asleep. But I wasn't. I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, listening to her muffled sobs. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no pity, no urge to comfort. Just clarity. She was finally tasting the emptiness she had fed me for years. And it was only going to get worse. It was at a friend's dinner party where Jessica's mask first cracked. We hadn't been out together in weeks, but she insisted we go, almost like she wanted to prove to everyone that things were fine. I agreed without hesitation, though not for the reasons she thought. I didn't want to prove anything. I just wanted to watch. The evening started the same way it always did. Her laughing too loud, talking too much, trying to command attention. But this time, people noticed something else. They noticed me. Not because I was louder, but because I was quieter, detached, different. When someone asked how I'd been, I spoke about the gym, new projects at work, places I wanted to travel. Jessica tried to cut in, to redirect the spotlight, but it didn't work. I wasn't the man trailing behind her anymore. I was standing on my own. At one point, a mutual friend leaned across the table and told me I looked different, stronger, healthier. I smiled and thanked him. Jessica's fork froze in midair. She forced a laugh, brushing it off as nothing, but her eyes betrayed her. She hated that people were noticing the changes she had ignored for months. Later, as the group drifted into smaller conversations, Jessica tried to wrap her arm through mine, the way she used to. I pulled away casually, like I hadn't noticed, and walked over to refill my glass. I didn't need to say anything. The gesture alone was enough. Her smile faltered, her laugh sounded thinner, and for the first time, people began to see the strain she was trying to hide. On the ride home, she stayed quiet. No music, no small talk, just silence, heavy and unsettled. When we pulled into the driveway, she finally asked if I was upset with her. I told her calmly that I wasn't upset. I wasn't anything. She didn't answer, but the tension in her hands gripping the steering wheel said more than words could. That night, I watched her move around the bedroom like she was walking on broken glass. She tried to start small conversations, tried to lean against me, tried to pretend she wasn't unraveling. But I stayed detached, silent, present only in the most technical sense. And she felt it, every second of it, because for the first time in years, she wasn't just losing me in private. She was losing me in front of others. The world she curated so carefully, the perfect image she had clung to, was slipping through her fingers. And the more visible my independence became, the more invisible she felt. That's when I knew the fall had only just begun. Jessica's fear turned into panic. It started with small gestures, her trying to dress the way she used to when we first dated, wearing perfume I hadn't smelled in years, cooking elaborate meals she never bothered with anymore. She hovered around me, waiting for a reaction, but I gave her none. I ate the food, thanked her politely, and carried on. Her efforts didn't land because I wasn't the same man who once craved her approval. When that didn't work, she turned desperate. She started texting me during the day, little messages she never used to send. Hope your morning's going okay. Miss you. Can't wait to see you tonight. I responded with simple, neutral replies. Thanks. Busy day. See you later. Each word was stripped of warmth, a mirror of the emptiness I had lived with for years. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't punishing her. I was showing her exactly what she had built. One evening, I came home late, sweat still on my shirt from the gym. Jessica was waiting in the living room, wine poured, candles lit, wearing lingerie she hadn't touched in years. She smiled nervously, trying to play it off like it was spontaneous. I sat down across from her, calm and detached, and started scrolling through my phone. Her smile faltered. She asked if I noticed how she looked. I told her she looked fine, then stood up and headed upstairs. She stayed there on the couch, glass trembling in her hand, eyes wide with disbelief. The next morning, she shifted tactics again. She accused me of being distant, cold, unrecognizable. She said I was acting like I didn't care anymore. She was right, but I didn't say it. I just shrugged and walked out the door, leaving her standing in the kitchen with words she couldn't take back. That silence broke her more than shouting ever could. She began snooping through my things, checking receipts, scrolling my phone when she thought I wasn't looking, watching my every move. But the more she searched, the more frustrated she became. There was nothing to find. No secret lover. No scandal. Just absence. That was what she couldn't fight. You can battle with anger, with jealousy, even with betrayal. But you can't fight someone who simply doesn't care anymore. And that was my power. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't guilty. I wasn't invested. She had told me once, "Don't touch me. You're annoying." Now she was the one reaching across the gulf, begging for attention with her eyes, and finding nothing but silence. And the emptiness she had created was finally swallowing her whole. Her desperation began spilling into the open, and for the first time, people outside our walls started noticing. It happened at a family gathering. Normally, Jessica was the polished one, the loud one, the center of attention. But this time, she was tense, fidgeting, her smile cracked at the edges. I stayed calm, speaking when spoken to, carrying myself with the quiet confidence that had grown sharper each week. And that contrast was obvious. Her sister pulled me aside, whispering that I looked different, happier even. I thanked her. Jessica overheard and stiffened, her laugh suddenly too forced, too brittle. Later, when everyone was sitting around the table, Jessica tried to make a joke at my expense, the kind of dig she used to throw casually, expecting me to take it. But this time, it landed flat. Nobody laughed. In fact, a few people looked at her strangely, like they were seeing something ugly for the first time. I didn't defend myself, didn't fight back. I just sipped my drink and let the silence settle. That silence was heavier than any retort. She shifted in her seat, her face flushed, her confidence fractured in front of the very people she had always wanted to impress. On the drive home, she exploded. She asked why I had been so quiet, why I didn't back her up, why I let her look bad. I told her simply that I didn't see the need to perform anymore. She had no response, just clenched fists on the steering wheel and the sound of her shallow breathing in the dark. The following week, her unraveling continued. At brunch with friends, she tried to cling to me, laughing too loud, touching my arm in ways she hadn't in years. Everyone noticed the awkwardness. One of her friends even asked me directly how things were going, concern written all over her face. I smiled and said everything was fine. Jessica's face went pale. She realized then that the story was slipping out of her control. The more she tried to grip it, the more obvious her panic became. At home, she started accusing me again, asking if I was doing all of this just to hurt her, if I wanted her to beg. I didn't answer. I didn't even look up. My silence crushed her because it left her alone with her thoughts, and her thoughts were the one place she couldn't escape. She had once been so confident, so dismissive, telling me I was annoying for wanting her touch. Now she was unraveling in front of friends and family, losing her grip, losing her image, losing everything. And I hadn't raised my voice once. The end didn't arrive with a fight. It came with silence, the same silence I had been building piece by piece, until it was strong enough to carry me out the door. By the time Jessica realized it, everything was already in motion. My clothes were folded into bags, my important documents locked away, my finances completely separate from hers. I had spent weeks preparing without her noticing, and when the moment came, there was nothing left for her to hold on to. That morning felt ordinary to her. She came into the kitchen, hair tied back, wearing the same robe she had worn for years. She asked if I wanted coffee, her voice too bright, too careful. I nodded, but didn't sit down. She poured the cup and set it on the counter. By the time she turned around, my keys and bags were already in my hand. She froze, her smile slipping. She asked where I was going. I told her calmly that I was leaving. No anger, no theatrics, no explanation. Just fact. She blinked, like her brain couldn't process the words. Then her questions came in a rush. Where? Why? For how long? I didn't answer. I walked past her, through the door, and into the morning air. Behind me, I heard her voice crack for the first time in years. Not sharp, not dismissive, but panicked. She called my name, begged me to wait, said we could fix it. I didn't turn around. I didn't even pause. The sound of her desperation faded with every step I took. By the time I reached my car, the silence had swallowed it. Driving away, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel regret. I felt clarity. For years, I had been told I was annoying, unwanted, too much. I had been dismissed, ignored, taken for granted. And now, the balance had shifted. She was the one standing in the ruins of silence, realizing too late that I wasn't hers to dismiss anymore. She had thought I would always be there, orbiting her moods, waiting for scraps of affection. She thought wrong. Because the truth is, the most dangerous man isn't the one who yells, or begs, or fights to be seen. It's the one who goes quiet, the one who stops asking, the one who disappears without looking back. And that's exactly who I had become. I didn't vanish. I didn't run. I simply walked away. And in that silence, Jessica finally understood the weight of her own words. She told me not to touch her. She told me I was annoying. Now, the only thing left for her to touch was emptiness. And I wasn't coming back. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.